All right, man. Week 3 is in the books, and we have the biggest lessons learned, the biggest takeaways from this past weekend. And the first one I want to get into is AJ Brown and Nico Collins have arrived. They have awoken. After the first week of the season, I think it was completely fair to be a little worried if you drafted them in the early rounds. I mean, they were quiet. In AJ Brown's case, he was pretty bad through the first 2 weeks of the season, and kind of concerning considering we spent some premium picks on these guys. But to start with Nico Collins, I mean, look, there is more than enough concerns to have about this Texans offense, but I think in most weeks he has showed that he's going to get his. He's going to get home no matter what, no matter if they score 3, 10, 20 points. He's going to continue to be a wide receiver one weekly and have a pretty nice ceiling on a weekly basis, just considering it looks like the Texans are going to be playing from behind a lot this year. They're not a very good team, and I think it's just exactly what we thought was going to happen from Nico Collins this year. He's a stud, wins at all three levels of the field. The Texans wide receiver one. There's really nobody else to, take away targets from him. So Nico Collins is what we thought he was, a stud. Now AJ Brown. He finally looked like himself again. I mean, it took him about 8 quarters, I would think. I don't think he had any catches through this last game at halftime. That hamstring issue from training camp looked like it clearly slowed him down. But in week 3, he finally looked 100%, especially in the second half. And it came at the perfect time because for the first time this season, we got to see the Eagles play from behind. They were down early. They were down big. They had to throw. And when they did, A.J. Brown went off. Devontae Smith had a really solid fantasy day as well. Jalen Hurts looked good throwing the ball. This passing offense looked exactly like we wanted to look throughout the season. Overall, week 3 was a confidence booster for Nico and AJ Brown, and especially AJ Brown. And if you drafted these guys expecting weekly production and these kind of performances, I think it is something you can start to expect through the next couple of weeks and throughout the rest of the season. I feel like it was a good point to start on them just because of how heavy of a burden it was, especially after seeing their big performances. It felt like a massive burden lifted. We no longer have to be nervous about them because they clearly showed that, they are who they always have been. Studs, nothing's changed. So through 3 weeks, we have a trio of second-year studs struggling, and I know some of you are wondering, do I panic? Am I patient? And I get it. It's been frustrating, especially when we're talking about Loud McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., and Marvin Harrison Jr. So let's start with the one I'm least worried about, and I'm going to talk about Loud McConkey. If you told me before the season that the Chargers were going to flip the script, go from a run-heavy team to a top 8 team in pass attempts per game, throwing it 6 more times per game than they did last year, and they look like a top 1, 2, 3 team in the league through 3 weeks, I'd have guessed that Ladd was probably going off. Wide receiver one numbers, wide receiver one territory, but honestly, that hasn't been the case. I mean, stat-wise, he's sitting behind Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson. He's averaging just 10 fantasy points per game. He still hasn't found the end zone, but here's the thing. I'm not panicking. Not even close, not at all. Ladd is a weekly starter in my book. He is a wide receiver 2 at the very least, a wide receiver 1 most weeks in good matchups. The targets are there. And it's only a matter of time before those chunk plays start landing like they did in year 1. He got off to a slow start in year 1 as well. So, give him some grace a little bit. I don't expect Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson to keep this up most of the year. It's just simply not sustainable and completely different from what we saw from Keenan Allen last year when he was in Chicago and from Quentin Johnson's first years in the league. Ladd's the alpha. Ladd's talent will shine through. He's just too much of a stud, and I'm not really worried about him. So if you had Ladd McConkey, be patient. Big games are coming ahead. So Ladd McConkey is still a wide receiver 1 and at least a high-end wide receiver 2 for me weekly. Now let's talk about Brian Thomas Jr. and Marvin Harrison. This is where things get a little bit murky. If you're a Jags or a Cardinals fan, you have to be disappointed. I mean, especially with BTJ coming into year 2 with a healthy Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen taking over as the head coach, calling plays, and expectations were pretty sky high. But dude, it's been rough. It's been really rough. Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. They just aren't clicking whatsoever. Only 7 completions on 25 targets. He's had some bad drops. It's been brutal. I know some of the throws have been off target, but BTJ really has not helped himself either. He's not making the grabs that we saw him make all of last year. He's clearly doesn't look like the same player. He's creating lots of separation. He's getting all the targets in this offense, but not finishing plays. Clearly at times not on the same page with Trevor Lawrence. And through 3 weeks, I absolutely think it's fair to panic. The panic meter should be relatively high, but I still believe in the talent. We saw what he did last year. He's a complete stud, one of the best rookie wide receivers we've ever seen. I think I'm going to give him a couple more weeks before I completely hit the panic button and I start to, tiptoe backwards on Brian Thomas Jr. The talent's just there. The targets are there. We know that he's going to be the focal point in this offense, and we know that the Jags are not going to succeed if Brian Thomas Jr. is not the alpha, is not producing in this offense. So I think that this is a lull that is only going to go on for maybe one more week, I hope. And if not, I think he breaks out in week 4 and has a really, really good game. So Brian Thomas Jr., I am kind of in the middle on, but I still have a lot of faith in. The talent's been there. We saw what he did his rookie year. I'm trusting what I saw. So Brian Thomas Jr., I'm a little lukewarm on, but I still believe in him. And I'm starting him every single week until otherwise. But finally, it's time to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. After a really disappointing rookie season, I mean, we were taking this guy in the second round of draft last year. He is once again leaving us scratching our heads. A year ago, we were calling him generation when he was coming out of Ohio State. Now he looks like a shadow of that player. I mean, I was lower on him heading into year 2 than most people, but even I didn't expect this. The chemistry with Kyler still off, and the way the offensive coordinator is using him week to week is absolutely malpractice. It's mind numbing. It's hard to watch. After a really nice week 1, he's through 3 weeks just barely putting up 10 points per game. And week 3 was especially rough. I mean, he dropped a long touchdown. He let another big play slip through his hands. Just a tough outing all around. Not a good look. He clearly looked upset after the game. Right now, he's the guy I'm most concerned about out of the 3. Maybe he turns it around. Maybe he's a guy that we were high on him coming out of Ohio State. Maybe he's that exact same player that we thought he was going to be coming out of Ohio State and when he was the 4th overall pick in the draft. But his chemistry with Kyler clearly isn't there. The utilization in this offense isn't there as well. Trey McBride continues to operate as wide receiver 1 until, otherwise. I mean, the guy's a stud, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. But for now, I unfortunately have to say that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a volatile flex play most weeks, and you can really only trust him in favorable matchups. Even then, I think he is no different than a guy like Jameson Williams who can pop some weeks, but is going to have a pretty low floor, every other week and on a more consistent basis than you'd like. Ladies and gentlemen, the contenders for the RB1 this season are here. It's very clear who they are. And although we are seeing some incredible seasons from some big time fantasy players, I think the most impactful storylines seem to be the 2 running backs who are returning to legendary form, and Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. The battle for RB1 goes straight through these 2, and I don't think it's close. CMC and JT have been completely dominant, averaging 23 points a game and 25 points a game, and it's just not the fantasy production, too. They look like the 2 best runners of the football on the planet and 2 of the best players on the entire planet as well. And in both of their cases, we have seen them finish as the RB1 in a season before, but the last couple of years with CMC, with injuries, and the last couple of years with Jonathan Taylor, and just being on bad teams has really held them back. But now everything seems to be clicking and going their way. And if they both stay healthy, we could be in for a special season where we have 2 legendary running back seasons. So let's talk about Jonathan Taylor first, because it's so refreshing to see his talent on full display again and being unleashed after not seeing it for a couple of years, because the Colts haven't looked great, but this year completely different. The Colts look fantastic, and Daniel Jones, yes, you heard that right, Daniel Jones has stepped in and unlocked this offense in a way that we haven't seen in a while, because Anthony Richardson clearly held his team back. They are near the top of the league in almost every offensive category, and JT looks great, explosive. He's even contributing in the receiving game, averaging nearly 3 receptions per contest, With that dual threat usage, he's absolutely in the mix to finish as the RB1 and challenge McCaffrey for the crown. Now on to McCaffrey, because he's a funny one. We always worry about the injuries, but what is there more to say? As long as he's healthy, he is the front runner to be the RB1. He's a machine. He's putting up wide receiver numbers every single week. He had 10 catches in week 3 alone. He's currently sitting as 3rd in the NFL in receptions and targets. That floor ceiling combo is insane. He's giving you a weekly edge just off the receiving work that you don't see from any other running back in the league. And get this, he's only scored 1 touchdown so far and is still averaging over 23 points a game. With Brock Purdy set to return in week 4, we can expect even more consistency from the quarterback position after having, Mac Jones fill in. But we finally have Purdy back, and we're going to see more scoring chances for the 49ers in general and for McCaffrey moving forward. Now, if I had to pick between the 2, I'm going with CMC as my RB1 for the rest of the season. Just no question. Whenever he's healthy, he just seems to be the top of the crop, the cream of the crop every single year. And JT's the only guy I think can truly have a shot to challenge him, especially if the Colts offense keeps rolling. But it feels sustainable. especially considering the teams that they've already steamrolled this year and the defenses that they've already played and seem to dominate in the process. Now, look, I don't want to disrespect the other two guys who I think are still in the conversation, but are still trailing Jonathan Taylor and McCaffrey a little bit, and that is Bijan Robinson and Jameer Gibbs. They're both electric. They're both awesome, both super young, but Bijan's stuck in a pretty average Atlanta offense, and Gibbs is still splitting touches with Montgomery, which is capping his ceiling just a little bit, and that's concerning for me. That's the only thing holding them back from like a 23 plus point per game mark like CMC and JT. So the bottom line, though, barring injury, McCaffrey and Taylor are my clear RB1 and RB2. The rest of the way, they're doing special things. We might have two legendary running back seasons once again, and I cannot wait to see how the rest of this race unfolds the rest of the season. And the injury bug strikes again. After Joe Burrow's injury last week, we were hit with two more major blows that are absolutely going to shake up the fantasy landscape for the rest of the season. And while I don't like to talk about injuries, these need to be talked about because it's going to open the door for two young, talented running backs who need to be in your lineup every single week. So let's start with probably the biggest one, and it's going to be James Conner. He went down with a season ending ankle injury this past Sunday. And that's a tough one because Connor's been one of the most consistent backs in the league, a rock solid football player year after year, and a super, super big loss for Arizona in the offense. But this injury officially hands the keys to Trey Benson. And if you're not familiar with Trey Benson, he was the 66th overall pick out of the third round in the 2024 NFL draft, and someone we've kind of been waiting to see in a full time role for quite some time now. And now we get the chance. Benson's flashed a lot of explosiveness this year in limited touches, and he's a legit weapon out of the backfield. With Connor out, Benson steps into the clear lead role in this offense with literally no competition behind him. Emari DeMarcado looks to be the second string now, who really isn't going to vulture much of anything. Benson immediately becomes a top 24 option and a solid RB2 weekly, and you can feel good about starting him in most matchups, even in not great ones. If he's somehow still available in your league, somehow go grab him. Like right now, empty the clip on him if you play in a fab league. I'd literally consider dropping almost everything I have, if not all of my budget, on him right this minute tomorrow morning. He is 100% a priority and the main guy on the waiver wire you need to add if he's somehow out there right now. But let's talk about the next one. And the next one is not as big as the James Conner one, but pretty big because Najee Harris went down with a torn Achilles, and what it means for Amarian Hampton is pretty significant. To put it simply, this locks Hampton in as a top 12 to 15 running back the rest of the season, at the very least. And why this was significant, because there was a lot of panic with Hampton after his slow starts in week 1 and 2, but week 3, unfortunately, with the injury, completely flipped the narrative. Hampton saw 25 touches, and a lot of them after Harris left. He racked up 129 yards, dropped 25 fantasy points. He got in the end zone. He wasn't super efficient on the ground, but that didn't matter because we finally got to see his pass catching ability on full display. 6 catches for 95 yards. That's a skill set we've been waiting to see since his days at North Carolina. Like that was his big thing coming out of college. Is yes, he was big, he was a workhorse, but he could catch the ball out of the backfield. That was one of his main strengths and something we've been waiting to see for quite a while now. Unfortunately, like I said, the same game saw Najee Harris go down with a torn Achilles. It sucks. I hate to see it. I hope he recovers very quickly. I love to see him back on the field. Everybody likes Najee Harris, but it ends his 2025 season, and it's a brutal blow, especially knowing that Najee just fought from a serious off-the-field injury that kept him out all of camp and preseason. He was going to be a roadblock for Hampton, his ceiling early on, but now it seems that the road seems to be clear, and we could pretty much lock him in as a bell cow for just about the entire year. If you sat him last week against Denver, I get it. It was a tough matchup, but for those who kept the faith, you were rewarded, and going forward, you can expect more of the same with him. All the volume in the world, the pass catching. With Najee out, Hampton's role is absolutely secure, and his upside is massive, especially down the stretch as he gets more up to speed with the speed of the NFL. Time to talk about some rookies on the rise. And while we just talked about a lot of injuries just a few seconds ago, week 3 had its fair share of downs, but it also had some serious bright spots, especially for a few key headline rookies that are starting to make a lot of waves. Some more smaller waves than others, but waves nonetheless. Now let's kick things off with a name we talked about last week, Quinshon Judkins. And I said it looked like the Browns wanted to feature him, and it turns out that aged pretty well because after logging just 19 snaps in week 2, Judkins nearly doubled it in week 3, playing 36 out of the 66 snaps. He handled 18 of the team's 19 carries out of the backfield. Bell cow usage, he turned those touches into 95 yards and a touchdown. The Browns ended up beating the Packers, who looked to be the Super Bowl favorites this year, and he looked explosive doing it. Just looked angry, looked good, looked like the early second round pick that he was drafted at Ohio State to be. Now, the Browns offense leaves a lot to be desired, but Judkins is carving out a legit role. You can pretty much lock him in as a low to mid RB2 with upside, especially in favorable matchups. Just watching him play, like I said, he looks angry, he's got burst, and you can tell he's motivated after a super rocky offseason. And if you drafted him or snagged him off of waivers, you've got to feel great about it. Next up, Mr. Matthew Golden, Hook'em Horns. His first 2 weeks were confusing, is the best way to put it. Snap counts were low, route participation was minimal. It just didn't make sense for a first round rookie to be playing this amount, this little. But week 3 seemed to be a flip of the script. Golden played 69% of the snaps, ran 26 routes after running 23 and 12, I think, the week before, and caught all 4 of his targets for 52 yards. The target share isn't there yet, but this was a step forward in the right direction. Golden is a big play waiting to happen. I mean, we saw what he did at the combine. He was like a 4.29 guy, and he nearly broke a long touchdown this last week. And his speed and ability to win at all 3 levels of the field make him a super dangerous weapon, especially for this Packers offense that looks like it's going to be pretty darn good. This team looks like it's going to be pretty high powered this year under Matt LaFleur. The Packers look like one of the best teams in the NFL, and he's got a juicy matchup in Week 4. And while I don't feel good about starting him right now, right away, if you have to slot him in your lineup this week, I don't hate it, especially against a Cowboys defense that really has struggled all 3 games of the season. They gave up a bunch of points this past week to the Bears, who kind of struggled a little bit the first 2 weeks, and they looked awesome. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is the game that he really breaks out. So keep your eye out on Golden. He could be a really sneaky flex play this week if you absolutely need him, and could be a potential league winner down the stretch. So keep your eye out for Matthew Golden. He is a big play waiting to happen, and it is coming soon. And finally, it's finally time to talk about Cam Scatterboo. It's officially wheels up for the rookie out of Arizona State, who we all loved out of college. We saw him during that Texas game. He absolutely killed that future NFL defense with a bunch of NFL players on it. Through 3 weeks, he's looked better and better with each opportunity. He just needed the opportunity, and with Tyron Tracy going down in Sunday night's game against the Chiefs, Scatterboo stepped up in a big way and produced big time. He finished the night with 16 touches, 121 total yards, forced 8 missed tackles, which is ridiculous, found the end zone in the process. But what really stood out to me was his work in the passing game, because this is what elevates the floor of a running back and also the ceiling. He caught 6 passes on 8 targets for 60 yards. It was a real skill set that he had out of college. That kind of dual threat ability is gold in fantasy and exactly what we look for. Like I said, it raises the floor and it gives you something to lean on, especially if they're not able to get home in the rushing game. Scatterboo looks to be taking over as the lead back in New York, and even though the offense isn't great, his volume, versatility make him a really strong RB2 to flex option moving forward, especially if Tyron Tracy misses any time whatsoever. But Scatterboo looks like he could be a really nice starter this upcoming week and could be a weekly starter as the weeks get ahead and as he gets more comfortable in this offense. Jackson Dart was also just announced as the starter, so we can only hope that he makes this offense better and that this Giants offense kind of takes a turn for the better. Russell Wilson has been super consistent, and maybe Jackson Dart can, provide a spark in this offense along with Cam Scatterboo, and we can start both of these guys down the line. So we love to see it from Golden, Scatterboo, and Quinshon Judkins. These are guys on the rise and guys that you absolutely should feel really, really good about starting in your lineup now, and especially down the stretch and in the future. I'm not even sure how to start this next conversation, but to put it simply, I think it's time that we talk about Ashton Genty. There have been a handful of early round disappointments this season, but easily one of the biggest has to be this past year's drafts. Number 6 overall pick, Ashton Genty coming out of Boise State. He looked like one of the best running back prospects that we've ever seen, and one of the best we've seen in a long, long time, maybe since Saquon Barkley. I mean, the guy nearly broke Barry Sanders' rushing record, had 2,600 yards in a final season. Nobody could tackle him, and he looked like he was going to carry that right into the NFL. Fast forward to now, and yeah, it's been a frustrating start, but context matters, and I think it could spark a turnaround soon. And I think that people really, really need to pay attention to this. They need to listen to this, especially if they own Ashton Genty, because it matters. Here's the wildest stat of the week, and you might need to hear it twice for it to actually sink in. Genty has 144 rushing yards on the season and 146 rush yards after contact. That means he's literally gaining more yards after being hit than he is in total. That's insane. Last week against Washington, he was hit at or behind the line of scrimmage on 11 of his 17 carries. And through 3 weeks, that's happened on 27 of his 47 attempts. The run blocking has been absolutely brutal, and there is just no room for him to work, no room for him to go, no room for him to run or do any of the special things they did in college. But I think the bigger issue, though, it's got to be the offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, coming over from Ohio State. We thought that this was going to be an up-tempo team, a creative, system under Chip Kelly, and it just hasn't been. Genty hasn't topped a 55% route participation in any game this season, and instead, those passing down snaps are being given to Zamir White and Dylan Labe. Dylan Labe was a healthy scratch all last year, barely played, and Zamir White got benched for Sincere McCormick and a couple of other guys that came in from Oakland off the streets. So why? I have no idea. It makes literally no sense. You spend the number 6 overall pick on a generational talent like Genty, and then you take him off the field in obvious passing down situations. It's malpractice. It simply is a straight up misuse of resources by the Raiders and super unfortunate for us fantasy managers. Now, I'm not saying this isn't alarming because it is. If you drafted Genty in the first or early second round, you have to be annoyed. I would be too, but here's the thing. I'm staying patient. I know a lot of people are panicking, but I'm staying patient. I'm trusting the prospect. I'm trusting the draft capital. I'm trusting what I saw on film. Genty is clearly special. If you watch any of the games, and we've seen the story before. I mean, I remember when we were panicking about Jahmyr Gibbs after his pretty brutal first 4 games of the season, or even Bijan Robinson his rookie year. Even Amarian Hampton had people worried before his breakout last week, and things can change really quick. These situations flip fast, and I refuse to believe Chip Kelly is going to keep being stubborn. The Raiders front office, the Raiders head coaching staff just will not allow it. And at some point, they have to start feeding their star back and find more creative ways to get him the ball because if they don't, the Raiders are just going to suffer because they're not a good enough team. They're not a good enough offense to go away from a guy like Genty, who they just took with the number 6 overall pick. So here's my take. If you're in a good spot, if you're 2-1, 3-0, if you're sitting on a lot of depth, go buy Genty right now. I mean, his breakout game is coming. I'm not saying trade away guys like James Cook or Josh Jacobs, who you drafted after Genty, but if you've got a guy like Javonte Williams and you can add a piece to him to go get him from a manager who's really panicking, go do it. If you can package a solid piece with Jordan Mason after his big week and capitalize on that, do it, please. Or maybe you can go from Travis Etienne or Chuba Hubbard and find a way to make it work. I can almost guarantee you that whoever drafted Genty in your league is sweating bullets right now. I would be too. Test the waters. Just see what's out there, though. But if you're not in a position to do it, then just don't take the risk. It's not worth it right now. We don't know what's going to happen, but I'm staying patient with Genty. I believe in the talent. I believe in the prospect that he was coming out of college. His breakout game is coming. They are not going to go the entire year. We are not going to go the entire year without seeing Ashton Genty have a couple of big games. Big things are coming. Try to stay patient. Like I said, I know I said it a bunch of times in this video, but you'll be glad when he didn't bail and you get to see his 100-yard game, 150-yard game on your fantasy roster and him scoring fantasy points for you for the rest of the year. Rookies sometimes take time, no matter how good they are. We've seen it with Bijan Robinson. We've seen it with Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think the same thing is happening with Ashton Genty. Be patient. The prospect, the player is awesome. It's coming.